One rainy afternoon, I stepped onto her porch with a package and left with something I never expected: temptation, betrayal, and a story that would rewrite the rules of my marriage. What began as shelter from the storm became a secret I couldn't outrun, and it all started with a delivery. To my loyal subscribers, thank you for always being here. If you haven't already, tap that notification bell so you never miss an emotional true story like this one. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button to help us bring more raw, real-life stories to light. Your support makes this possible. Now, let's continue with my story. My name's Mark Turner. I'm 42 years old, born and raised in North Carolina. Been married to my high school sweetheart, Katie, for almost 19 years. We've got 2 kids, one in high school, the other just started middle school. To most people looking in, my life probably looked stable. Boring even. And that's the thing about boring. It could be the perfect hiding place for trouble. I've been working delivery routes for a local courier service for almost 8 years. Rain or shine, I'm out there with my truck dropping off packages. Over time, you start to recognize the regulars. You learn their routines: who's home during the day, who leaves notes on the door, who offers you a bottle of water in the summer heat. Hannah Carson was one of those regulars. She lived in a newer neighborhood, not far from the lake. Quiet streets, nice homes with perfect lawns. Hers was the light blue two-story with white trim and flower beds, so neat they looked fake. Every few weeks, I'd drop off a box or 2 for her, usually stuff from home decor websites or organic food delivery boxes. She'd always answer with a gentle smile and a "thank you so much." At first, she was just another stop, another polite customer, nothing more. But then came that Thursday. The sky had looked strange all morning. Heavy, gray, like it was holding its breath. By the time I pulled onto Hannah Street, the clouds had finally decided to let go. It wasn't just rain. It was like the sky exploded. Sheets of water came down so fast, my wipers couldn't keep up. I pulled in her driveway and grabbed the box from the back. Before I even made it to the porch, I was soaked to the bone. I rang the bell, and she opened the door quickly, stepping back as she saw me dripping. "Oh my God," she said, covering her mouth. "You're drenched. Come in just for a second. You'll catch your death out there." Now, I'm not the kind of guy who steps into people's homes on deliveries. Company policy says don't do it. But in that moment, with water pooling in my shoes and lightning cracking across the sky, I nodded and stepped inside. Her house smelled like vanilla and fresh coffee. A soft piano song was playing on a speaker in the background. She offered me a towel and told me to wait by the door while the worst of the storm passed. "I just made coffee," she said. "Let me get you a cup. No cream, right?" I didn't remember telling her how I took my coffee. But she was right. She handed me the cup with a quiet smile. And for the first time, I actually looked at her. Hannah wasn't the kind of beautiful that demanded attention. She had this soft, tired prettiness. Dark blonde hair pulled into a loose braid, a faded UNC sweatshirt and leggings. Barefoot, but it was her eyes, gray like the sky outside, that pulled me in. They looked like someone who had been waiting for something. Or maybe someone. We talked, nothing deep, just about the storm, the weather, the mess of packages around her living room. She laughed when I made a joke about Amazon addiction. She told me her husband, Tom, was out of town again. "He travels a lot," she said, not offering more. 15 minutes later, the rain slowed. I handed back the towel and thanked her again. As I stepped back out into the soft drizzle, she said something that stuck with me. "Drive safe, Mark." My name. I don't wear a name tag. And I never told her my name. I didn't know it then, but that small moment, her knowing who I was, her inviting me in, would be the crack in the dam. The first drop of water before the flood. That night, I told Katie about the storm, about how crazy the weather got. But I didn't mention Hannah, or the coffee, or the way her voice had lingered in my mind the rest of the drive. It was just a delivery, just a cup of coffee. That's what I told myself. But I'd be lying if I said something didn't shift in me that day. Something subtle and dangerous. And the storm hadn't even really begun. After that rainy afternoon at Hannah Whitaker's door, something subtle shifted in my routine. I wouldn't call it guilt. Not yet, but there was a flicker in the back of my mind every time I pulled in her neighborhood. Like something had started, even though nothing had happened. At least not yet. I didn't tell anyone about stepping into her house. Not my coworkers, and definitely not Katie. My wife trusted me. She always had. We'd been through a lot over the years. 2 kids, job losses, health scares. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being in it together. She got busier, I got quieter, and the space between us grew slowly, like rust on an old fence. 2 weeks later, I had another delivery for Hannah. A light one, looked like a throw blanket or something. This time, the weather was calm, but I still felt my chest tighten when I turned onto her street. I told myself to just drop the box and go. But when I reached the porch, the door opened before I could even knock. "Hey, Mark," she said, smiling like she'd been waiting. There was again. My name. No label. No reminder. Just a remembering. "Hey," I said, handing her the box. "Dry day today. That's an improvement." She laughed softly. No towel needed this time. Her voice had this warmth to it, like a quiet fire in the middle of winter. She hesitated, then motioned behind her. I was just about to make another pot of coffee. "You in a rush?" I should have said yes. I had 4 more stops on my route, but my mouth betrayed me. Actually, I could use a break. That's how it started. Small. A cup of coffee here. A 10-minute chat there. We never sat on the couch. I'd lean against the counter. She'd perch on a bar stool in the kitchen. She told me about her work-from-home job, the writing she used to love, and how quiet the house felt when her husband was gone. I found myself telling her about my boys, about the dumb things they did, how I missed having dinner as a family like we used to. There was something easy about talking to Hannah. She listened like she actually heard me, not like Katie, who'd become distracted over the years. She wasn't cold, just always somewhere else mentally. Always working late, always focused on the next thing. And I guess I stopped trying. One day, I stayed too long. My phone buzzed with a text from Katie. "Everything okay? You're usually home by now." That hit me hard. I mumbled something to Hannah about traffic and needing to go. She walked me to the door, holding her coffee mug between her hands. Before I left, she said, "You don't talk much at first, but you've got a lot in there." I chuckled, trying to brush it off. "Yeah, I guess most people just want the package, not the person delivering it." "I like both," she said. That line stuck with me the whole drive home. The next time I saw her was on a Monday. I was having a rough morning. Katie and I had argued about the bills again. Nothing big, just that sharp tone in her voice that told me she was tired of carrying too much. And maybe she was right. I hadn't been emotionally present, but neither had she. I pulled into Hannah's driveway, still in a storm of my own thoughts. When she opened the door, she immediately noticed. "You okay?" I hesitated, then just said, "It's just one of those days." She nodded like she understood. "You want to come in? Just for a minute." That minute turned into nearly half an hour. I don't even remember what we talked about. Music, childhood memories, dumb stuff. But I remember how I felt. Seen, heard, relaxed. When I got up to leave, she stood too. For a second, we were close. Too close. Her hand brushed my arm. I didn't step back. "I'm glad you come by," she said quietly. I wanted to say something. Anything. But all I could manage was a small nod. When I left that time, my heart was racing. Nothing had happened, but it almost did. That night, I lay in bed next to Katie. Her back was to me, as usual. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about how quiet our room was. How long it had been since we just talked. I turned to look at her. I wanted to tell her everything. About how distant we'd become. About Hannah. About how I felt like I was fading out of my own life. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I picked up my phone and found myself typing out a message. "Thanks again for the coffee today. I needed that." A second later, Hannah replied, "Anytime. You're easy to talk to." And that's when the line crossed. It wasn't physical, but something inside me had shifted. Something real. Something dangerous. From then on, I started looking forward to her deliveries. Started checking the schedule to see when her address would pop up again. Started waking up thinking about a woman who wasn't my wife. And the scariest part? It felt right. There are moments you look back on and realize that was the one. The point of no return. For me, it was a quiet Thursday afternoon. I remember it clear as day, though I wish I didn't. I was finishing my route early, partly because traffic was light, and partly because I saw Hannah's name on my delivery manifest. I shouldn't have been excited. I was married. I had responsibilities. A home. 2 boys. But in that moment, all I could think about was seeing her again. When I arrived, her door was already slightly cracked open. I knocked anyway. "Come in," she called from inside. That was new. She'd never just left it open like that. I stepped in and called out gently, "Hannah." "I'm in the garage," she shouted back. I could use a second set of hands. The garage? That was a first. I followed the sound of her voice, pushing open the side door that led from her laundry room into the garage. She was bent over an old electric mower, her sleeves rolled up, hair tied messily on top of her head. There was grease on her cheek and a smudge on her elbow. "You work on lawn mowers now," I joked, trying to mask the electricity sparking in my chest. She glanced up and smiled. "Not usually, but it quit on me last weekend, and I hate waiting for help." I stepped closer. "What's wrong with it?" "No clue," she said, standing upright. "But it's heavy, and I thought maybe you." Her eyes met mine. We were standing too close. Way too close. I looked down at her hands. She wasn't wearing gloves. Just delicate fingers marked with oil. I didn't even register that I reached out to wipe the grease from her cheek with my thumb. And that's when it happened. She didn't pull away. She didn't even blink. Her hand reached up, gently catching mine before it could fall away. "I think about you," she said softly. "Probably more than I should." I couldn't breathe. "Hannah," I whispered, but there was no warning in my voice. No resistance. Just need. Confusion. Longing. She stepped in closer, our chests barely apart now. "You make me feel like someone sees me again." Before I could speak, she kissed me. And I let her. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't rushed. It was slow. Intimate. Like something that had been simmering beneath the surface finally let go. I didn't stop it. I didn't push her away. I wrapped my arms around her and kissed her back, deeply, fully, with every ounce of emotion I hadn't felt in years. And that's when I betrayed my wife. Not just emotionally, not just in messages or glances, but fully, physically, right there, in the quiet shadows of Hannah's garage, between half-repaired tools and boxes of holiday decorations. I crossed the line I never thought I'd even walk toward. Afterward, we sat in silence. She pulled her legs up onto the old workbench while I leaned against the wall, heart racing, mind spinning. No words came for a while. Then Hannah whispered, "Are you okay?" I laughed under my breath, bitter and sad. "No, not really. I'm not trying to ruin anything," she said quickly. "This wasn't some plan." "I know," I said, and I did. She hadn't seduced me with intent or strategy. It had happened because of slow build, because I let my guard down, because I'd wanted it, because something in me was already broken long before I stepped into her garage. When I got home that evening, Katie was at the kitchen counter. She looked up briefly and said, "You're late." "Had a detour," I said. She nodded and went back to typing. No further questions. I stood there in silence, watching my wife, the woman I had promised forever to, focused on her screen, completely unaware of what I had done hours earlier. I wanted her to notice me, to ask, to look into my eyes and see what I was hiding. But she didn't. She didn't see me. And a dark part of me wondered if she ever really had. That night, I lay in bed wide awake. The guilt didn't come all at once. It came in waves, followed by anger, sadness, and worse, a flicker of desire to do it again. I checked my phone. A message was waiting. "Hannah, I'm sorry if I messed things up." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "You didn't." I did. I hit send. And just like that, the damage was done. I had become the man I used to judge. The man who let a moment destroy years of loyalty, vows, and shared life. But as I lay there listening to the soft, steady breathing of my wife next to me, all I could feel was emptiness. And somewhere deep inside, the terrifying truth. I didn't regret it. Not yet. Guilt is a strange thing. It doesn't always come screaming at you with sirens and fists. Sometimes it's quieter than a whisper, just a dull throb in the background of your life. But it's always there, pulsing, waiting, watching. After that afternoon in Hannah's garage, everything changed between us. We didn't talk every day. We didn't send long messages or arrange secret meetups. But something unspoken had been born, and it refused to die. A week passed. Then two. I kept delivering to her, just like before. Only now our eyes lingered longer. Our hands brushed. The tension grew heavier. Sometimes she'd leave a note tucked into the package, just a small folded slip with a few handwritten words. Missed seeing you yesterday. That kiss still lives in my head. Are you okay? I'd shove them in my pocket, my heart thudding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. At home, Katie remained in her usual rhythm. Morning coffee, work calls, dinner in silence. She didn't notice the change in me. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. One night, about a month after it first happened, I walked into the house after work and found her at the kitchen island, wine glass in hand, staring at me. You've been quiet lately, she said. I paused. Just tired. From delivering packages? Or from something else? Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. A little too sharp. I set down my keys. What do you mean? I don't know. You tell me. She took a sip and leaned back. Anything you want to talk about? I looked at her and felt something twist in my chest. We had spent 10 years building a life together. A home, 2 children, vacations, mortgage payments, late-night talks, so many memories. But in that moment, it felt like I was staring at a stranger. I'm just tired, Katie, I said again. That's all. She didn't press, just gave me a tight smile and nodded. Okay, but I knew better. Later that week, I made another delivery to Hannah's house. It was raining again, the same steady drizzle that had become symbolic between us. She opened the door before I knocked. She'd been waiting. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. It was all in the look. She reached out, gently touched my hand, and whispered, I still think about that day. I swallowed hard. Me too. I'm not asking you to leave your wife, she said quickly. I don't want to break up your family. I looked at her, heart pounding. But you want more? I want you, she said, voice trembling. Even if it's just pieces of you. I'd rather have that than nothing. It was wrong. All of it. But it felt real, dangerously real. Like the first time in years I'd felt seen. Needed. We kissed again that day. Briefly. Desperately. Just enough to relight the fire we both kept trying to smother. I left her house, soaked from the rain, but burning on the inside. 2 nights later, Katie and I were watching TV. Or pretending to. I was scrolling my phone under a blanket, trying not to seem suspicious. A message popped up from Hannah. I dreamed about you last night. It felt more real than anything I've known in years. Katie glanced at me. I froze. Who's that? She asked. No one. I replied too quickly. Just a work thing. She nodded slowly. Right. And then she did something that made my blood run cold. She reached for my phone. What are you doing? I asked, half laughing, half panicking. Just curious, she said. You've been guarding this thing like it's Fort Knox lately. I jerked it back before she could touch it. Seriously, Katie. Don't. Her expression shifted. So there is something. I didn't answer. The silence between us grew sharp. Heavy. Loaded. You're seeing someone? She asked quietly. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She stood up, her face pale now. Her jaw clenched. How long? She asked. Katie, how long? I looked down at the floor, the weight of shame crushing my chest. A few weeks, I admitted. She turned away from me, her whole body stiff like stone. For a moment, I thought she might throw something or scream. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, get out. What? Take your phone, your guilt, your lies, and get out of my house. I packed a bag that night, slept in my truck outside a motel. I didn't go to Hannah's. I couldn't. I didn't know where to go. I wasn't ready for anyone to see me like this. Everything I had feared came true, and I had no one to blame but myself. Katie didn't answer my texts. I tried calling. Once, twice, 10 times. No reply. The next day, I saw her sister picking up our boys from school. That hurt more than anything else. Hannah messaged me that night. Are you okay? I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had destroyed the life I built with my own hands. And for what? A spark? All quiche. A moment? No, it was more than that. It was the echo of everything I hadn't dealt with in my marriage. The loneliness, the absence, the silence, and yes, my own weakness. You never expect your life to fall apart in slow motion. One moment, you're sitting at your kitchen table, sipping morning coffee with a woman you've loved for over a decade. The next, you're staring at that same seat, empty, wondering how everything slipped through your fingers. Katie didn't speak to me for weeks after I left the house. Not a word. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She simply vanished from my world like I never belonged in hers. And somehow, that was worse than any explosion. I stayed in that run-down motel outside town for longer than I'd care to admit. Just me, a cheap bed, my regrets, and the silence. The boys didn't call. I understood why. I couldn't explain to them why Daddy wasn't coming home. Not in a way that made sense. How do you tell your kids you broke everything? Hannah reached out once or twice, but she gave me space. I think she could tell I wasn't in a place to give her anything real. One afternoon, I did go see her. I sat on her porch while the sun was setting, and we talked. Not like lovers, not even like friends. Just two broken people who had wandered too close to each other when they were lost. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, I said. She nodded. Neither did I. She looked tired, like she'd been carrying guilt too, not just for me, but for her own life, her own wounds. She never talked much about her ex-husband, but I knew there was damage there. She had been lonely too. I thought maybe this was something, she whispered, but maybe it was just two people clinging to the wrong thing at the right time. That hit harder than anything. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't even hug. We just sat in silence until the sky turned dark. Then I left. Eventually, Katie and I met again. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was cold, formal. It was about the kids. She met me at a local diner. Her sister had them at a park nearby. She slid a document across the table. Custody agreement, she said, not looking me in the eye. My hands trembled as I picked it up. She let me see them every other weekend. Holidays rotated. No overnights until emotional stability could be reassessed. In short, I had lost more than my marriage. I nodded. I didn't fight. I didn't beg, because I had already taken too much. Weeks turned into months. I found a small apartment above a hardware store. My delivery job kept me busy. I went to therapy. I read books. I tried to piece myself back together. I didn't date. I didn't reach out to Hannah again. Not because I hated her, but because I had learned something through the pain. If you don't fix what's broken inside of you, you'll keep bleeding on people who didn't cut you. I bled all over Hannah. I bled all over Katie. And now, I was learning how to clean up my own mess. One day, Katie called. It had been 7 months. She didn't sound angry. She didn't sound sad. She just said, "Can we talk?" We met at the same diner. She was wearing her old blue sweater, the one I got her for Christmas years ago. She looked calm, composed. "How are the boys?" I asked. "They miss you," she said. "They ask about you a lot." That broke me all over again. "I know I have no right to ask," I said, barely holding my voice steady. "But I want to be better. For them. For myself." She studied me for a long time. "You've changed," she finally said. I had to. She sipped her coffee. "I can't promise we'll ever be us again." "I'm not asking for that," I said quickly. "I just want to be present. Honest. Real." She nodded. "Let's start with that." Months later, I got to have the boys for an overnight. Then 2. Then full weekends. Katie and I even started having real conversations again. Not about love. Not yet. But about life. And I began to feel human again. I tell you this story not because I'm proud. I tell you this because I want you to know that one mistake doesn't define your whole life, but it can destroy everything if you let it. I broke something sacred. I betrayed a woman who stood beside me through hard years. All because I felt unseen, unloved, and instead of facing that truth, I ran into someone else's arms for comfort. I should have spoken up sooner. I should have asked for help. I should have fought for what I had before I reached for what I didn't. But I didn't, and now I live with that. Every single day. Hannah moved away last I heard. Started over in another town. I hope she finds peace. I hope she meets someone who gives her the love she deserves. As for me, I'm rebuilding. Slowly, quietly, one honest day at a time. And if you've ever found yourself standing at the edge of a decision that could burn your whole world down, step back, breathe, talk. Don't wait until the rain is falling and the damage is done. That's the end.